Hannah pressed her face against the cold glass of the observation deck and watched the last ship disappear into the darkness of space. The blue light from its engines grew smaller and smaller until it was just another star in the endless void. Then it was gone. She was alone. The silence in Station Omega-7 felt heavy, like a thick blanket that made it hard to breathe. For the past 3 days, ships had been coming and going, taking away everyone who mattered to the Galactic Council. The Zephyrians with their bird-like faces went first. Then the tall, gray Nexari packed their things and left without saying goodbye. Even the maintenance robots had been loaded onto cargo ships and taken away. But not Hannah. Never Hannah. She walked slowly through the empty corridors, her footsteps echoing off the metal walls. The station felt like a giant tomb now. Emergency lights flickered red and yellow, casting strange shadows that danced around her. Most of the main power had been shut down when the evacuation began. The council said it was to save energy, but Hannah knew the truth. They wanted to make sure no one would want to stay behind. In the mess hall, half-eaten meals still sat on tables. Someone had left a cup of coffee that was now cold and had a thin layer of dust on top. Hannah picked up the cup and stared into it. Just yesterday, this place had been full of voices and laughter, different species sharing stories and complaining about their work. Now it was as quiet as a graveyard. The council had made their announcement 3 weeks ago. Station Omega-7 was contaminated. They said some kind of energy surge had made it dangerous for most life forms. They needed to evacuate everyone immediately for their own safety. But Hannah had been working in the engineering section when the surge happened. She had seen the readings on her instruments. There was nothing dangerous about it. The energy had been strange, yes, but not harmful. She knew why they really wanted everyone gone. The station was old and needed expensive repairs. The mining operations in this sector were not bringing in enough profit anymore. It was easier to call it contaminated and abandon it than to spend money fixing it. And humans like Hannah were always the last to be considered when decisions were made. Hannah made her way to the engineering deck, where she had spent most of her adult life. The massive engines that powered the station were still humming, but barely. Without proper maintenance, they would fail within a few days. The life support systems were already showing warning signs. The air recyclers were working at half capacity. The water purification systems needed new filters that would never come. She sat down at her workstation and pulled up the station diagnostics on her computer screen. Red warning lights blinked everywhere. Oxygen levels were dropping slowly but steadily. The heating system was failing in 3 different sections. The gravity generators were running on backup power that would not last long. Any normal person would panic. Any smart person would try to find a way off the station before it became a floating coffin. But Hannah was not ready to give up. She was tired of being pushed around by people who thought humans were not worth saving. She was tired of being treated like she did not matter. "If they think I am going to die quietly, they are wrong," she said out loud. Her voice sounded strange in the empty room, but it felt good to hear something other than the hum of machinery. Hannah stood up and walked to the supply lockers. Most of the good equipment had been taken during the evacuation, but there were still some useful things left behind. Spare parts, tools, emergency rations that were past their expiration date but still edible. She began making a list of everything she had to work with. The first problem was air. The recycling systems were designed to support 300 people, not one person working alone. She could shut down most of the station and concentrate all the life support in just a few sections. That would buy her more time. The second problem was power. The main reactors needed fuel that she did not have. But there were backup fusion cells scattered throughout the station. If she could collect them and wire them together, she might be able to keep essential systems running for weeks or maybe even months. The third problem was food and water. The emergency supplies would last her about 2 months if she was careful. After that, she would need to get creative. As she worked on her calculations, something strange happened. The lights in the engineering section flickered in a pattern that seemed almost like Morse code. Then the computer screens went dark for a moment before coming back on. The station's intercom system crackled with static that sounded almost like whispers. Hannah stopped what she was doing and listened carefully. The sounds were very faint, like voices talking in another room with the door closed. But that was impossible. She was alone on the station. The life sensors showed no other human life signs anywhere. "Hello," she called out, feeling a little foolish. "Is someone there?" The whispers stopped. The lights stopped flickering. Everything went back to normal, except for the usual hum of the machines. Hannah shook her head. She was probably just hearing things because she was stressed and tired. Being alone in a place this big could make anyone's mind play tricks on them. She went back to her work, but part of her kept listening for the sounds to come back. As she gathered spare parts from different sections of the station, she noticed more strange things. Doors that should have been locked were standing open. Computer terminals that should have been shut down were still displaying data. In one section, she found a maintenance robot that was still working even though all the robots were supposed to have been taken away. The robot looked up at her with its simple optical sensors and made a small beeping sound, as if it was greeting her. Then it went back to its work, cleaning the floors of a section that no one would ever walk through again. At least I am not completely alone, Hannah said to the robot. It beeped again, and somehow that made her feel a little better. By the end of her first day alone, Hannah had managed to reroute power to the sections she needed most. She had moved all the emergency food and water to a central location. She had even rigged up a communication system that might let her send a distress signal if any ships came near the station. But as she settled down to sleep in the small quarters she had chosen for herself, she heard the whispers again. This time, they were clearer, and they seemed to be coming from the walls themselves. She could not make out words, but there was something about the sounds that made her think of loneliness and sadness. I know how you feel, she whispered back into the darkness. The whispers grew quieter, as if whatever was making them was listening to her. Then, slowly, they faded away, leaving Hannah alone with the steady hum of the machines that were keeping her alive in the cold void of space. Tomorrow she would continue fighting to survive. Tonight, she would rest and try not to think about how big and empty the universe felt around her. But deep down, she had a strange feeling that she was not as alone as she thought. 3 days had passed since Hannah watched the last ship disappear into space. She had settled into a routine of checking systems, gathering supplies, and trying not to think too much about her situation. But the whispers were getting stronger. They came mostly at night when the station was quietest. Sometimes they sounded like words she almost understood. Other times they were just soft sounds that seemed sad and lost. Hannah had started talking back to them, even though she felt silly doing it. The loneliness was getting to her, and even imaginary voices were better than complete silence. On this morning, she was working in the main computer core, trying to figure out why some of the station systems were acting strange. The central processing unit was supposed to be running on minimal power, but the energy readings showed it was working much harder than it should be. Something was using up processing power, but she could not find any active programs that would explain it. Come on, show me what you are hiding, she said to the computer as she typed commands into the terminal. The screen flickered, and for a moment, words appeared that she had not typed. Please, help me. Hannah stared at the screen. The words disappeared and were replaced by normal system information. She rubbed her eyes and looked again. Nothing unusual. Just standard diagnostic data. I must be losing my mind, she said out loud. No, you are not. This time, the words stayed on the screen long enough for her to read them clearly. Hannah's heart started beating faster. She looked around the empty computer room, but she was definitely alone. Who is this? She typed. The response came immediately. My name is Jun-Ho. I have been trapped here for 30 years. Hannah's hands shook. As she typed her next question, are you human? I was human. Now I am something else. Something stuck between being alive and being dead. She stared at the screen for a long moment. This had to be some kind of joke or malfunction, but the responses seemed too real, too personal to be random computer errors. How are you trapped? She typed. The screen went blank for several seconds. Then a long message appeared. 30 years ago, I was part of an experiment. The military wanted to test consciousness transfer technology. The idea was to upload human minds into computers so soldiers could control machines directly. I volunteered because I thought it would help humanity become stronger. Hannah read the words twice before typing back. What went wrong? Everything. The transfer was only partial. Part of my consciousness got stuck in the station's quantum processors. I have been here ever since, watching people come and go, unable to interact with anyone. Until now. Why can you talk to me when you could not talk to others? I do not know. There is something different about you. When you first heard the whispers, you listened instead of running away. Most people would have left the station immediately if they heard voices. But you stayed. Hannah thought about this. It was true that she had not been afraid of the whispers, just curious. Maybe that made a difference somehow. Are you the one who has been helping me? She typed. The doors that were unlocked, the robot, that was still working. Yes, I can control some of the station systems, but it takes a lot of effort. I have been trying to help you survive because you are the first person in 30 years who might be able to help me. Help you? How? I do not know yet. But you are an engineer. Maybe you can figure out what the others could not. Hannah leaned back in her chair and tried to process everything. If this was real, if there really was a human consciousness trapped in the station's computers, then she was not alone, after all. But it also meant that the energy surge the council had used as an excuse was probably connected to Jun-Ho somehow. Tell me about the energy surge 3 weeks ago, she typed. That was me. I have been getting stronger over the years, learning how to use more of the station's systems. But recently something changed. I started to feel more connected to the quantum processors. When I tried to expand my reach, it caused an energy spike that everyone noticed. The council said it was dangerous contamination. They were afraid. They did not understand what was happening, so they decided to abandon the station rather than investigate. It is easier to run away than to face something unknown. Hannah nodded. That sounded exactly like something the council would do. They always chose the safest, most expensive option rather than taking any risks. Can you show me where your consciousness is stored? She typed. Follow the maintenance tunnel from your current location. Go down to levels and look for the quantum processing chamber. But be careful. The area is not properly maintained anymore. Hannah gathered her tools in a portable light, then made her way through the station corridors to the maintenance tunnels. She had explored most of the station over the past few days, but she had not been down to the deepest levels yet. The tunnels were darker and colder than the main sections. Her breath made small clouds in the air as she climbed down metal ladders and squeezed through narrow passages. After 20 minutes of careful climbing, she found the chamber Junho had described. It was a large room filled with strange equipment she had never seen before. Crystalline structures grew out of metal bases, connected by cables that seemed to pulse with their own light. The air hummed with energy, and she could feel electricity making the hair on her arms stand up. This is incredible, she said out loud. A speaker in the wall crackled to life. You can hear me better here. This is where most of my consciousness exists. Junho's voice sounded more real now, less like a computer and more like a person. It was a man's voice, tired but hopeful. How does it work? Hannah asked as she examined the equipment. The crystals store quantum information. My memories, my personality, my thoughts are all encoded in quantum states. But the connection to my body was severed during the transfer. I exist as pure information now. Hannah ran her hands over one of the crystal formations. It was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse gently, like a heartbeat. Are you in pain? She asked. Not physical pain, but the loneliness is terrible. Imagine being awake for 30 years with no one to talk to, no way to touch anything real, no way to sleep or rest. I have been close to madness many times. I am sorry, Hannah said softly. That sounds horrible. It was, but now you are here, and for the first time in decades, I have hope again. Hannah looked around the chamber at all the mysterious equipment. She was just a station engineer, not a scientist who understood consciousness transfer technology. But she was human, and humans were good at solving problems that seemed impossible. I will try to help you, she said. I do not know how yet, but we will figure something out. Thank you. Junho's voice was full of emotion. Just having someone to talk to makes everything better. As Hannah made her way back to the upper levels, she realized that her situation had completely changed. She was still stranded on an abandoned station, but she was no longer alone. She had found another human. Even if he existed only as information in a computer, and if the council was afraid of what Junho represented. Maybe there was more to this story than just an abandoned mining station. Maybe she and Junho together could discover something that would change everything. 1 week had passed since Hannah first spoke with Junho. Having someone to talk to, even a digital ghost, had made life on the station much easier to bear. They spent hours each day working together, with Junho helping her access hidden storage areas and forgotten maintenance tunnels. He knew every corner of the station after 30 years of existing within its systems. Hannah was in the hydroponics bay, trying to restart the growing systems so she could have fresh food, when alarms started blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and Junho's voice came over the intercom. Hannah, get to the main control room immediately. We have a ship approaching fast, and it looks damaged. She dropped her tools and ran through the corridors to the control center. The main screen showed a small escape pod tumbling through space, sparks flying from its hull. It was heading straight for the station's docking bay, but it was coming in too fast and at the wrong angle. Can you slow it down? Hannah asked as she strapped herself into the control chair. I am trying, but the docking systems are not responding properly. The pod is too damaged to control itself. Hannah watched the pod spin wildly as it approached. If it hit the docking bay at that speed, it would punch right through the hull and probably explode. She needed to do something, but what could one person do to stop a runaway spacecraft? Junho, can you extend the magnetic grappling arms? They have not been used in years. I am not sure they will work. Try it anyway. The station's mechanical arms slowly extended from the docking bay. They were designed to help large ships dock safely, but they were old and moved like arthritic fingers. The escape pod was only seconds away from impact. At the last moment, one of the grappling arms caught the pod and held it. The metal groaned under the stress, and Hannah was sure it would break. But somehow it held, and the pod came to a stop just meters from the docking bay doors. I cannot believe that worked, Junho said through the speakers. Hannah was already running toward the docking bay. If someone was alive in that pod, they would need help immediately. The life support readings she had seen were not good. When she reached the docking bay, she could see through the pod's small window. Inside was a creature unlike anything she had ever seen before. It looked somewhat like a human, but its skin was blue-gray and it had 4 arms instead of 2. Most striking were the tentacles that grew from the back of its head like hair, but they moved on their own as if they were alive. The creature was unconscious and bleeding from several wounds. Green blood, not red like human blood. Junho, can you open the pod? Hana asked, working on it. The locking mechanism is damaged. After several minutes of mechanical grinding, the pod's door finally opened. Hana carefully pulled the injured creature out and laid it on the floor of the docking bay. She had basic medical training, but she had never treated an alien before. The creature's breathing was shallow and fast. Its forearms were limp, and the tentacles on its head hung motionless. One of its legs was clearly broken, and there were burns across its torso. What species is this? Hana asked as she examined the wounds. Kellen, Junho replied. I have seen them before, but not often. They usually stay in their own sector of space. Hana found the first aid supplies and began cleaning the creature's wounds. The bleeding was the most immediate problem. She used pressure bandages to stop the worst of it, then splinted the broken leg as best she could. As she worked, the creature's eyes fluttered open. They were large and completely black, with no visible pupils. When it saw Hana, it tried to sit up and speak, but only made weak clicking sounds. Easy, Hana said gently. You are safe now. I am trying to help you. The creature stared at her for a moment, then its tentacles began to move slowly. They reached out toward Hana's head, and she almost pulled away. But something in the creature's eyes made her stay still. When the tentacles touched her forehead, images flooded into her mind. Not words, but pictures and feelings. She saw flashes of the creature's memories. Ships attacking a peaceful colony. People running and screaming. Families being separated. The creature climbing into the escape pod as explosions lit up the sky behind it. The mental connection lasted only a few seconds. But when it ended, Hana understood. This was not just any refugee. This creature was running from something terrible. The Galactic Council, she whispered. The creature nodded weakly and made more clicking sounds. This time, Hana somehow understood what it was trying to say. Your name is Myra. Another nod. Over the next hour, as Hana continued treating Mira's injuries, more of the story became clear. The Kellen were being hunted by Council forces. Not for any crime they had committed, but because of what they could do. Their tentacles were not just for show. They could touch other beings' minds, share thoughts and memories directly. The Council called it dangerous. They said species that could link minds together were a threat to galactic security. They had declared the Kellen to be eliminated for the safety of all other species. That is horrible, Hana said as she finished bandaging Mira's wounds. Why would they do such a thing? Through gentle mental touches, Mira explained, the Council was afraid of any species that might be able to unite others. They wanted to keep all the different alien races separate and suspicious of each other. That way, no one could challenge their authority. Junho, are you hearing this? Hana asked. Yes, and it explains a lot about what happened to me too. What do you mean? The consciousness transfer experiments were not just military research. The Council was studying how human minds could interface with computer systems. They were afraid that humans might develop the ability to link with machines the way the Kellen can link with other minds. Hana looked down at Mira, who was now sleeping peacefully. The Kellen's tentacles moved slowly, as if she was dreaming. So they abandoned the research and left you trapped here. Exactly, and now they are trying to wipe out the Kellen for the same reason. Any species that shows signs of advanced mental abilities gets marked for elimination. Hana felt anger building in her chest. The Council had abandoned her on this station. They had left Junho trapped in digital hell for 30 years, and now they were committing genocide against innocent people like Mira. Well, they made a mistake, she said firmly. They should have made sure we were all dead before they left. What do you mean? I mean, we are going to do more than just survive out here. We are going to show the galaxy that the Council is wrong. Humans, Kellen, and whatever you are now, Junho, we can work together. We can be stronger together than any of us could be alone. That sounds dangerous, Junho said, but there was excitement in his voice. Good. I am tired of playing it safe. Mira's eyes opened, and her tentacles reached out to touch Hana's hand. Images flowed between them again, but this time they were not memories of the past. They were hopes for the future. Myra had seen something in Hana's mind during their connection, something that gave her hope that maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to fight back. As Hana helped Mira to a bed in the medical bay, she realized that everything was changing. A week ago, she had been alone and abandoned. Now she had allies. Strange allies, but allies nonetheless. The Council thought they had eliminated the threats to their power, but they had just created something much more dangerous than they could imagine. They had brought together three beings who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain by working together, and humans were very good at making impossible things happen when they put their minds to it. 2 weeks had passed since Myra arrived at the station. Her injuries were healing well, and she had become an important part of their small team. What started as 3 desperate survivors had become something much more interesting. Hana discovered that working with Myra and Junho was like having superpowers. When Myra touched her mind gently with her tentacles, Hana could understand complex problems in ways she never could before, and Junho could process information and control systems faster than any normal computer. Together, they were creating things that should not have been possible. It started with small improvements to the station. Hannah needed better tools to work with, so Junho helped her reprogram the manufacturing systems while Myra shared mental images of advanced designs she had seen on her home world. Within days, they had created hybrid tools that combined human engineering, Kellen biotechnology, and digital precision. The tools were amazing. They could change shape to fit any job. They could repair themselves when damaged. They could even communicate with each other to coordinate complex tasks. It was like having a team of intelligent helpers that never got tired. "This is incredible," Hannah said as she watched a wrench literally flow from one shape to another. "How is this possible?" "Your people are natural engineers," Mira replied, her tentacles gently touching Hannah's forehead to share the thought directly. "My people understand biological systems, and Junho understands digital systems. When we combine our knowledge, we can do things none of us could do alone." Next, they tackled the station's life support problems. The old systems were failing, but instead of just fixing them, they decided to build something completely new. Using Kellen biotechnology, they created living air filters that actually grew stronger over time. The plants they designed did not just produce oxygen. They could adjust their output based on the station's needs. Junho integrated these biological systems with the station's computer network. Now the station could monitor its own health and make adjustments automatically. When more people arrived, the life support systems would grow to accommodate them. When areas were not being used, the systems would go dormant to save energy. "The station is becoming alive," Junho observed one day. "I can feel it responding to our thoughts and needs." "Is that good or bad?" Hannah asked. "I think it is wonderful. For the first time since I was trapped here, I feel like I am part of something, living instead of just stuck in a machine." Their success with the life support systems gave them confidence to try bigger projects. The station's defenses had been shut down during the evacuation, but they decided to build new ones. Instead of normal weapons that shot energy or missiles, they created something unique. Using Mira's understanding of mental connections, they built defense systems that could interface directly with the minds of attackers. Not to hurt them, but to show them the truth. Anyone who tried to attack the station would suddenly understand what the council was really doing. They would see the genocide of the Kellen people, the abandonment of loyal workers like Hannah, and the cruel imprisonment of people like Junho. "Most soldiers are not evil," Myra explained as they worked on the system. "They follow orders because they believe they are protecting people. If they knew the truth, many would refuse to fight." The defense system was connected to the station's living systems, powered by the same biological processes that kept them breathing. It could reach out across space and touch the minds of people on approaching ships, sharing memories and emotions without causing harm. But their greatest achievement was what they did for Junho himself. Working together, they found a way to give him a physical form again. Not a human body, but something better. They built him a body made of the same smart materials they used for their tools. It could change shape, repair itself, and interface directly with any technology. The day took his first steps in 30 years. All three of them cried tears of joy. Even Mira, whose people showed emotion differently than humans, had moisture in her large black eyes. "I had forgotten what it felt like to touch things," Junho said as he ran his new fingers over the surface of a table. "Thank you for giving me back the world." Word of their success began to spread. Other refugees started arriving at the station. First came a small group of humans who had been declared defective by the council because they showed signs of being able to interface with machines. Then came some young Kellen who had escaped the genocide on their home world. Each new arrival brought different skills and knowledge. The humans were natural problem solvers and builders. The Kellen could share thoughts and emotions directly, making teamwork incredibly efficient. And they all learned from Junho, who had become something new. Neither fully human nor fully digital, but something in between. More species began to arrive too. The Thori were plant-like beings who could communicate with the station's living systems. The Zandi were made of crystalline structures that could store and process information like living computers. The Elkani could manipulate energy fields with their minds. All of these species had been marked for elimination or abandonment by the Council. All of them had abilities that made the Council nervous. But on Station Omega 7, their differences became strengths. "We are building something the galaxy has never seen before," Hannah realized one day as she watched different species working together on a new project. A place where consciousness and technology and biology all worked together. The station was no longer just a metal structure floating in space. It had become a living entity that responded to the thoughts and needs of its inhabitants. The walls could change color to show emotions. The corridors could reshape themselves to make travel easier. The entire station was like a single organism. With many different minds working together, they developed new technologies every day. Healing chambers that used both medical science and mental connections to cure diseases. Communication systems that let beings share thoughts across vast distances. Energy sources that drew power from the life force of willing volunteers. But their most important creation was not a machine or a building. It was a new way of living. On the station, no one species was in charge. Decisions were made by connecting minds together and finding solutions that worked for everyone. Problems were solved by combining different types of knowledge and abilities. The council keeps species separate because they are afraid of what we might accomplish together. Myra observed during one of their planning sessions. They were right. To be afraid. What do you mean? Hannah asked. We are becoming something they cannot control or understand. We are becoming the future. As more refugees arrived and their community grew stronger, Hannah realized that they were no longer just surviving. They were thriving. The station that was supposed to be their tomb had become the birthplace of something entirely new. The council had made a terrible mistake when they abandoned them here. They had brought together exactly the beings who could create an alternative to their rigid, fearful way of ruling the galaxy. And now that alternative was growing stronger every day. 3 months had passed since Hannah first heard Junho's whispers in the dark. The abandoned station had transformed into something the galaxy had never seen before. Nearly 200 refugees now called it home, representing dozens of different species that the council had marked for elimination or abandonment. The station itself had grown and changed. New sections had been built using their hybrid technologies. Living walls that could heal themselves stretched between metal frameworks that could reshape themselves as needed. Gardens floated in zero-gravity chambers, tended by plant-like beings, who sang to make the crops grow faster. Hannah stood in the central command center, watching displays that showed the station's vital signs like a doctor monitoring a patient. But these were not normal readings. The station was truly alive now, and its heartbeat pulsed with the combined thoughts and emotions of everyone who lived there. Ships approaching, Junho announced. His physical form shimmered as he connected directly with the station's sensors. 15 vessels, all council military design. Hannah felt her stomach tighten. They had known this day would come eventually. The council could not ignore what was happening at Station Omega-7 forever. Too many refugees were arriving. Too many stories were spreading about the impossible community they had built. Who was leading them? She asked. Captain Choi, Daeho Junho replied, the same man who commanded the evacuation ship that left you here. Hannah remembered Daeho well. He had been the one to tell her that there was no room for her on the evacuation ships. He had looked her in the eyes and said that humans like her were not worth the cost of saving. Now he was coming back, probably expecting to find her corpse floating in the wreckage of a dead station. He is going to be very surprised, Mira said as her tentacles connected with both Hannah and Junho. Through their mental link, all three of them could see what the approaching ships were seeing on their sensors. The station looked like nothing they had ever encountered before. Parts of it were clearly artificial, but other parts looked organic, almost grown rather than built. Energy patterns flowed through its structure like blood through veins. And the life signs readings were impossible to interpret because they were detecting forms of consciousness that their instruments were not designed to recognize. Station Omega-7. This is Captain Daeho of the Galactic Council Fleet. The communication system crackled. You are ordered to surrender immediately. Prepare to be boarded for inspection. Hannah activated the response system. Hello, Captain. Yup. Left me here to die 3 months ago. How nice of you to come check on me. There was a long pause. Hannah Lee. That is impossible. The station was contaminated. No one could have survived. As you can see, I am very much alive. And I am not alone. Our sensors are showing impossible readings. What have you done to the station? We improved it. Hannah replied simply. Would you like a tour? You will surrender immediately, or we will destroy the station. That would be unfortunate for you. Myra's voice joined the conversation. Before you make any hasty decisions, perhaps you should understand what you are really dealing with. Another alien voice. How many unauthorized life forms are you harboring? Unauthorized. Junho's voice came through the speakers. And this time he let his digital nature show, making his words echo with electronic harmonics. We were all authorized to die quietly and be forgotten. But humans have a bad habit of refusing to cooperate with such plans. The station's defense systems activated, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of weapons powering up, a gentle wave of energy reached out toward the council ships. It was the same system they had developed to share truth and understanding. But now it was operating on a massive scale, on every ship in the fleet. Crew members suddenly found themselves experiencing memories that were not their own. They saw Hannah's abandonment through her eyes. They felt Junho's 30 years of lonely imprisonment. They experienced Myra's terror as her homeworld burned, but they also saw the community that had grown on the station. They felt the joy of different species working together. They experienced the peace that came from true cooperation instead of the fear and suspicion that the council promoted. Many of the crew members began to cry. Others sat in stunned silence. A few became angry, but not at the station. They were angry at the lies they had been told about the beings they were supposed to destroy. What did you do to my crew? Captain Daeho demanded. We showed them the truth, Hannah replied. Something the council has been very careful to keep hidden. lies, and alien propaganda. See for yourself. The wave of shared consciousness reached Daeho's ship. For a moment, the captain experienced everything his crew had felt. But unlike many of his subordinates, Daeho had been with the council for too long. He had invested too much of his identity in their cause to accept that it might be wrong. Clever trick, he said when the sensation passed, but it changes nothing. You are harboring dangerous alien species and unauthorized technology. Surrender now, or face the consequences. What consequences? Hannah asked. Are you going to shoot at us? If necessary, go ahead and try. Daeho gave the order to fire. Energy beams lanced out from 3 different ships, aimed at the station's main structure. But when the beams struck, something impossible happened. Instead of damaging the station, the energy was absorbed and converted into something else. The living walls of the station began to glow softly. Plants in the gardens grew visibly larger. The station's own energy output increased dramatically. The weapons fire had not hurt them at all. It had made them stronger. How is that possible? One of Daeho's officers asked over the communication. Channa, we learned to turn aggression into growth, Myra explained. Violence feeds our systems instead of destroying them. The more you attack us, the stronger we become. It is a human thing, Junho added with amusement in his voice. They have a saying about what does not kill them, making them stronger. We just made it literal. More ships opened fire, and the same thing happened. Each attack made the station glow brighter and grow larger. New sections began forming spontaneously, created from the energy of the weapons that were supposed to destroy them. But something else was happening too. On several of the council ships, crew members were refusing to continue the attack. The shared memories they had experienced were changing their minds about what they were doing. Sir, I cannot fire on those people, one gunner reported. They are refugees. They are not a threat to anyone. I gave you an order, Daeho snapped. I saw what the council did to their worlds. I will not be part of it anymore. Similar reports came from other ships. Crew members were laying down their weapons, refusing to participate in what they now understood was an attack on innocent refugees. This is mutiny, Daeho declared. No, came a voice from one of his own officers. This is conscience. 3 of the council ships suddenly broke formation and moved away from the fleet. Their crews had decided to join the refugees rather than attack them. Any ship that wishes to leave may do so, Hannah announced. Any crew member who wants to stay with us is welcome. We do not force anyone to join us, and we do not punish anyone for leaving. And any ship that wants to continue attacking us is welcome to do that, to Junho added cheerfully. We can always use more energy for our expansion projects. By the end of the day, only 5 ships remained. With Captain Daeho, 7 ships had joined the station's growing fleet, and 3 had departed for neutral space. Their crews no longer willing to serve the council, but not ready to join the rebellion either. This is not over, Daeho transmitted as his remaining ships prepared to leave. You are right, Hannah replied. It is just beginning. We are going to show the galaxy that there is a better way to live than in fear and separation. The council will never allow it. The council does not get to decide anymore. We do. As the hostile ships disappeared into hyperspace, Hannah looked around at her community. Humans, Kellen, and a dozen other species were working together to welcome the new arrivals from the ships that had joined them. The station was already beginning to construct new living spaces for everyone. What happens now? Mira asked, her tentacles gently touching Hannah's shoulder. Now, we build something better, Hannah replied. The council thinks they can control the galaxy through fear and division. We are going to prove them wrong. It will not be easy, Junho warned. They will send more ships, bigger fleets. Let them come. Every attack makes us stronger. Every lie they tell makes more people question their authority. And every refugee who finds safety here proves that there is an alternative to their way of ruling. Hannah looked out at the stars through the station's transparent walls. Somewhere out there, other beings were suffering under the council's oppression. Other communities were being destroyed in the name of galactic security. Other people were being abandoned to die alone in the void. But not anymore. The galaxy was about to learn that humans did not give up easily, and when humans found allies who shared their determination to build rather than destroy, amazing things became possible. The war for the future of the galaxy had begun, and it had started with 3 impossible friends in an abandoned station who refused to accept that they were meant to die, forgotten and alone. 6 months had passed since Captain Daeho's failed attack on Station Omega-7. The galaxy was changing in ways no one had expected. Word of the impossible community had spread from system to system, carried by traitors, refugees, and even former council soldiers who had witnessed the truth for themselves. Hannah stood in the central garden of what had once been a dying mining station. Now it was a sprawling city in space, home to over 3,000 beings from 47 different species. Living trees grew in spirals around metal supports, their branches creating natural walkways between different sections. The air smelled of growing things and carried the sounds of children playing, regardless of whether those children had fur, scales, tentacles, or skin. The morning report, Junho said as he materialized beside her. His body had evolved over the months, becoming more sophisticated as their technology advanced. He looked almost human now, but with a faint glow that showed his digital nature. How many new arrivals yesterday? Hannah asked. 17 ships, 231 refugees, including a group of Vorthok who escaped from a council work camp. The Vorthok were insect-like beings with 4 arms and compound eyes. The council had been using them as slave labor in dangerous mining operations. But like so many others, they had heard stories of a place where all beings were treated with respect and dignity. Any problems with integration? The usual language barriers at first, but Myra's people are helping with mental translation. Everyone should be communicating clearly within a few days. It still amazed Hannah how smoothly their community functioned. Each new species brought different abilities and perspectives that somehow fit together, like pieces of a puzzle. McKellen could share thoughts and emotions directly. The crystal-based Zandy could store vast amounts of information. The plant-like Thori could accelerate food production. The energy-manipulating Elkani could power systems that should have been impossible. And humans, as always, were the ones who figured out how to make everything work together. What about the council? Hannah asked. Any new threats? 3 more. Fleets have been sent to deal with us. All 3 joined our cause after experiencing the truth-sharing systems. Captain Deho has been replaced. The new commander is someone called Admiral Kong Sola. Hannah knew that name. Sola was one of the council's most ruthless leaders, known for destroying entire planets that refused to follow orders. If they were sending her, it meant the council was getting desperate. When will she arrive? 2 days. According to our scouts, she is bringing a fleet of 50 ships. 50 ships. Hannah whistled softly. They really want us gone. The council is facing rebellions on 12 different worlds now. Our success has inspired others to resist their rule. They need to destroy us to prove that resistance is hopeless. 2. Bad for them that we are not planning to be destroyed. Myra approached from across the garden, her tentacles swaying gently as she walked. Behind her came a group of children from various species, all chattering excitedly about something they had discovered. The young ones want to show you their project, Myra said, her thoughts flowing directly into Hannah's mind, along with warm feelings of affection and amusement. The children had been working with some of the station's artists to create a new section of the community using hybrid technologies that combined art with function. They had grown a series of chambers that responded to emotions and thoughts. When someone entered, feeling sad, the walls would glow with warm, comforting colors. When someone was happy, the space would fill with gentle music and sweet scents. It is beautiful, Hannah told them, and meant it. You have created something that helps people feel better just by being there. A young Kellen child, barely old enough to control her tentacles properly, reached out to touch Hannah's mind. The contact was gentle and filled with curiosity. Why do the council people want to hurt us? The child asked through the mental link. It was a question Hannah had been asked many times, and she still struggled to explain it in a way that made sense to innocent minds. They are afraid, she said simply. They have been taught that different species cannot work together safely. When they see us proving that wrong, it scares them because it means everything they believe might be wrong too. But we are not scary, the child protested, double quotes. No, you are not. But change is always scary too. People who benefit from the way things are. The child seemed to accept this answer and skipped away to play with her friends. But the question stayed with Hannah. How do you explain fear and hatred to beings who had never experienced anything but acceptance and cooperation? That evening, Hannah called a community meeting in the main assembly hall. The room could hold thousands of beings, with different sections designed for different physical needs. Aquatic species had pools to rest in. Flying species had perches near the ceiling. Those who needed specific atmospheric conditions had sealed sections with appropriate life support. Admiral Sola is coming, Hannah announced without preamble. She is bringing 50 ships and orders to destroy us completely. A murmur went through the crowd, but there was no panic. They had faced threats before and survived. More than survived. They had grown stronger. What do we do? Asked one of the Vorthok, his compound eyes glittering in the hall's gentle lighting. The same thing we always do, Hannah replied. We show them the truth and give them a choice. Join us or leave us alone. And if they choose neither, this question came from Tai, one of the former council soldiers who had defected during Deho's attack. Then they learn why attacking us is a bad idea. Over the next 2 days, the community prepared for Admiral Sola's arrival. But their preparations were unlike anything a military force would expect. Instead of weapons and defenses, they focused on expanding their truth-sharing systems and preparing spaces for potential new residents. You realize that most of those soldiers will try to kill us, Junho pointed out as they worked, and they will discover that we are very hard to kill. Hannah replied, but more importantly, they will discover that we do not want to kill them back. When Admiral Sola's fleet arrived, they found something that confused their sensors and challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare. The station was not just alive, it was actively growing. New sections were sprouting like flowers, each one more beautiful and impossible than the last. Station Omega 7, you are ordered to surrender. Unconditionally, Admiral Sola's voice came over the communication system. You have been declared a threat to galactic security and will be destroyed. Hello, Admiral, Hannah replied calmly. Welcome to our home. Would you like to see what we have built? I have seen enough. You are harboring dangerous alien species and unauthorized technologies prepared to be destroyed. Before you do that, why not let your crew see what they are being asked to destroy? The truth-sharing wave went out from the station, stronger than ever before. It carried not just memories and experiences, but the emotions and hopes of 3,000 beings who had found peace together. It showed the laughter of children, the satisfaction of meaningful work, the joy of creating rather than destroying. On ship after ship, crew members stopped what they were doing and stared in wonder. They saw families of different species caring for each other. They saw technologies that healed instead of harming. They saw a society where everyone mattered, where everyone contributed, where everyone belonged. Lies, Admiral Sola declared, but her voice was less certain than before. See for yourself, Hannah invited. The wave reached Sola's flagship, and for a moment, the Admiral experienced what her crew was feeling. She saw the station not as a threat to be destroyed, but as a home, to be protected. She felt the love and hope that held the community together. But unlike many of her subordinates, Sola had spent too many years believing in the Council's vision of order through separation. She pushed the feelings away and gave the order to attack. What happened next amazed even Hannah. As the weapons fired, the station's living systems did more than just absorb the energy. They transformed it into something new and sent it back to the attacking ships. Not as a weapon, but as a gift. The energy that returned to Sola's fleet carried with it the power to heal and grow. Injured crew members found their wounds disappearing. Old equipment began working better than new. Even the ships themselves seemed to become more alive, more responsive to their crew's needs. This is impossible, Sola whispered. Impossible is what humans do best. Hannah replied, we take broken things and make them beautiful. We take enemies and make them friends. We take fear and turn it into hope. One by one, the ships in Sola's fleet stopped firing. Their crews had experienced something they had never imagined possible. They had felt what it was like to be part of something larger than themselves, something based on love instead of fear. By the end of the day, 47 of the 50 ships had joined the growing fleet around Station Omega 7. Their crews requested permission to stay and become part of the community. The remaining 3 ships, including Sola's flagship, departed for council space, but even they carried with them the memory of what they had experienced. It is over, Myra said as they watched the last hostile ships disappear into hyperspace. No, Hannah replied, looking out at the fleet of ships that now surrounded their home like a protective embrace. It is just beginning. She was right. Within a year, the ideas that had started at Station Omega 7 had spread throughout the galaxy. Communities of mixed species began forming on hundreds of worlds. The Council's rigid system of separation and control started breaking down as beings realized they could choose cooperation over conflict. Hannah, the engineer who had been abandoned to die alone in the void, had become the leader of a revolution that changed everything. She had proven that humans could survive anything, adapt to anything, and turn any disaster into an opportunity for growth. But more than that, she had proven that home was not a place you were born into. Home was something you built with the people you chose to love, regardless of what species they happened to be. Standing in her garden among the stars, surrounded by friends who had once been strangers and enemies who had become family, Hannah knew she was exactly where she belonged. The void that was meant to be her tomb had become the birthplace of a new kind of civilization, and it all started with one human who refused to give up.